All right. Michelle and Alyssa back inside of the hot seat. We're going to chat today about users, right? And you both have a really unique perspective. I was excited to talk to both of you about this because obviously, Alyssa, when you're thinking about the strategy, we're always thinking about, we say this a lot at RedTree, a website should think of the user being the hero of the site. That's who you're talking to. That's who we want to conduct actions, so on and so forth. So from your standpoint, you're thinking about the user. But Michelle, from your standpoint, it's probably like a constant redirect from clients where they're coming to you and they want something and it's like, okay, that's great. But what does a user want or what's the goal for all of this? So I'm really excited. I think you'll have different perspectives of users. And then additionally, I'm going to set some context here, right? So we use the term users here at RedTree because we're building out websites. A lot of other people use words like target audience, your individual client profile, your ideal buyer persona. Pick a name. It's the people that are coming to your site, whether they're looking to buy something, read something, gain knowledge from you. That's why we lump them all into individual users. So, Alyssa, gonna kick it off to you to start, right? So when you're building out a strategy, how are you identifying who the user really is versus just like beyond the demographics?
That was gonna be my main point of, like, it's not the demographics. Sometimes some of the demographics matter, like, if it's a woman's health brand, then, of course, we're looking at women or folks that identify as women, but it's more than that. It's looking at what do they need at that time? What are they looking for? What are they struggling with? What does their world look like right now when they're going to the search bar? Are they frustrated by something? Are they looking for something to solve a problem for them? So, asking those kind of questions, I think, is more important than how old are they? How much money do they make? Sometimes we need to know those things, but for me, and the thing that gets me most excited is thinking about that need and how can we fill that for them.
And that's where I was going to get you to drill down a little bit more as you kind of sort of quickly glossed over this sort of like they're looking for a solution, right? So that is the big thing that we spend the most amount of time on. And you hit the nail on the head towards the end is what do they need to see? What solution are they trying to find? And especially if you're looking at other competitors, what do they need to see? So I really love that you like pulled that out a little bit more. Michelle, from your standpoint, like how do you handle clients that often overlook users inside of a project?
Just to remind them that they're overlooking their users. A lot of times, clients want to make a website that they like. They wanna do stuff that is cool and fun, and they like this color, or they like this activity, but you really need to push back and say, "But does your user like this? Will this help your user?" Make sure that they're making the website for the person that is going to be going to their website, not the person whose website it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, not only just liking it, like, do they understand it? So many times we have to redirect our clients and, like, is that a term you use, or is that a
Yes.
term your users are going to understand?
Exactly, and sometimes it's trial and error too, like, one time we made, our client's navigation was getting a little overloaded, so we're like, "Oh, maybe we should make this a hamburger," so we made it a hamburger for a while, and their feedback was, "We have a lot of older users, and they were getting confused." So, we pulled it right back out, but we tried it, we got feedback, and we fixed it, so we really listened to what the users were saying when we implemented it.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, in that case, our clients were thinking more about the user than we were, right? So that, I mean, that was great. I do think from our standpoint, there was something about the we presented data to them
Oh,
about the level of clicks on page versus inside of the navigation, and that's when it sort of sparked for them to think about, when our users are, a little bit older, they might not understand that they have to go.
yeah, older and not in an industry where they're spending a lot of time on a computer most of the time, so,
So we needed to make things easier for them too. Yeah. Um, so Alyssa, back to you, right? So we've talked a little bit about that need that the users want to see, and then also getting our clients to make sure they're communicating and working with us on what do they need to talk about, but also what does a user need to see? When it comes to a layout of a site, how do you start making some of those decisions based off of those factors?
Yeah, so once you sort of know the goals, I feel like then you can kind of like reverse engineer and almost pretend you are that user and go through the site and say like what would I need to see at this point? Or if it's, a lot of our clients where they have an existing site that we're making optimizations to, going through it and seeing like, where am I starting to get really frustrated? And, put your put yourself in the shoes of that user too. So for me, it might be, oh, I understand what a hamburger menu is. I'm just gonna click on this and it's gonna be fine. I try to say like, okay, I'm my 75-year-old grandmother. Am I getting upset when I'm trying to find where I need to go and I have to go into this? What are these 3 lines? I don't even know what this is. So yeah, I think going through the website and just marking down areas where you're getting frustrated or you're getting stuck, or, if we're at the beginning of the project and we're building out that strategy, sort of getting into their mindset of like, okay, what would somebody need to know at this point? How can we make it very clear, very easy for them to take the action? And when you understand their intent at that time, you can make better decisions. So, if we know that the user is in a researching phase, we need to give them a lot of information, be very like conversational in that of like what they need to know, because we still can't put like, paragraphs and paragraphs of text, but giving them a little bit of more information and then giving them a clear path. If we know the user's like ready to buy at this point, if it's a user that's going to come in and they just need to know how to sign up, then we make it that easy. We're like headline button. We just need to get them to go where they need to go. So, yeah.
It's interesting because we have a project right now that we're working on and we're collaborating a lot with the client. So let me set some context, right? So during the discovery meeting, it really kind of came out that anyone that's going to come to the website already knows what this brand does, right? So that was what kind of came up. Anyone that comes to this site, they know what it is that we do. What we need to present is case studies, right? So they need case studies. They're further down the funnel. They know what we do. What they're trying to do is compare us to someone. So we need to really showcase the projects, right? So in that instance, the really thinking about the user that's coming in and what they need to see higher than the others. But honestly, it's a conversation that the three of us have a lot with our clients between this battle of, and we're having this in this current project as well, where now we're having conversations of, well, maybe we put services on top of case studies, right? Like, does everybody know that when they come to the site, what we do? And it's a valid concern. Do you try to attract a lot of those people that might be cold, especially if we're doing good SEO, versus if it is a referral website, how do you balance between those services hierarchy and the case studies hierarchy?
We've even had one project where we put them in the same section because we knew they needed both. So really thinking outside the box and making sure we're doing what's best for the users.
Yeah, because I think there's like rules about like you want to give them one clear path. And, I think that's maybe a best practice that works in some cases, but there's other times where, we really do need to be thinking about both user cases, and as long as they're not too conflicting, giving them that option is totally fine. And if you do it in a way that like makes sense and is clear and logical, yeah, I think also the great thing is that websites are not permanent. So you can go in and you can make changes. You can see like, are people getting to this point of the website and getting frustrated and dropping off? Are they not even making it to our case studies because it's too low on the page? It is. I think a lot of people want to make it perfect the first go, and I think really we need that data to be able to know, because they have a basic understanding of their user. They have assumptions that they've made about their user, but once they get that website up, that's when they get the data to tell, okay, people are really clicking into the case studies and they're reading them. They're staying on the page for 2, 3 minutes, so they're clearly reading. But we're not going to know any of that until we start to collect some data.
Which is a great, and I'm sure, Michelle, you've had these conversations before where, not necessarily that we're in an impasse, right? Or we just might not agree with let's continue to use case studies over services. That's a good point in time to say to a client, great, okay, perfect. We'll put services higher up, we'll put case studies down below, and then we're going to set up a series of scroll depth data, or we're going to set some clicks, right? So we're going to set some event tracking in Google Analytics so that we can start to measure whether or not some of these assumptions are correct, right? So, and then we'll come back, right? And we'll come back with clear data to say, hey, no one's getting down that far. but we're seeing still a significant amount of traffic to case studies or something, right? So it's clear that the case studies need to come a little bit higher. So, like, when you're talking to clients sometimes, Michelle, and maybe you have an example, right, of like how you've sort of guided a client and or sort of worked with them to say, like, maybe we need data at the end of this.
We had a client who we had made a service section on the homepage for, and we were starting to realize that I don't think people are interacting with it the way we think they are. And they're like, yeah, we need to push services a little bit more. So we actually did some A/B testing on that one to see the real data and to look at some of the tools that we have. And we ended up changing that section because the data was showing it needed to be changed.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing. I mean, Alyssa brought up the fact of it's not etched in stone, right? That's the great thing about a website. But there's also a good bit of, hey, let's try this, right? Let's maybe try this and see if users, let's make some assumptions and then see if users do align with those assumptions.
Well, and that's the thing that's really great about our Blossom contracts is we can do those kind of things and come back and check, work on some other things in the meantime, come back and see what that data is actually saying and see if we need to pivot or if our assumptions were correct. So it's
Yeah.
really helpful.
And knowing your user is great for that too, because we were just at an SEO conference and one of the presenters was talking about just making small changes on a website versus doing like a full redesign. And I think in her example, she switched like sign up free or start your free trial, which everybody is so like over free trials. They don't need another subscription, they're over it. And so they knew their user well enough that instead of saying sign up free, they simply changed it to something like start reading because that got their user excited because that's what they want to do. They want to read. They want the free month so they could read, a book that they've had on their list. So just knowing your user helps you like make those small changes. It's so subtle, but it had like some insane amount of improvement just by making that small change.
Well, and from like a project management standpoint, knowing your users. So Misha and I had recently talked about your website should have a job description. And that is like step one. Step like 1A is who are your users? Because if we don't have that right before we start designing or writing content, it could lead to a scope creep. We'd have to go back and redo everything. We need to make sure that those are set in stone before we even move forward in a project. Prepping for this call, I read something and it was like, your users are your North Star. And I was like, ooh, I like that. So I was like, yeah, because if you're not going for that North Star, you might follow along these lines and things aren't going to be right and can lead to a mess.
Yeah, and that goes back to that are you going to put case studies first or services first, right? And sometimes it's just a question of like, what do you as the brand want to show versus what does a user want to see? Users might want to see case studies, but you really want to show the services, right? So there really does come a point in time where we have to sometimes push back onto clients. Now, at the end of the day, right? Their brands, their website, our job is to educate and to inform. So I think this has been a great conversation. Anything else you guys want to add before we jump off?
Yeah, I guess I just had a thought too of like knowing where your user is important too, because, like the service case study debate just got me thinking, you know, they might just not be ready to buy. And I think our clients sometimes assume everybody's ready to buy and they might just need that like little bit more like convincing. And that's where the case studies would come in. So I think it really, really is important to not only understand your user, but like where they are in their buyer's journey.
Well, and in thinking about that as well, I mean, how many B2B clients that we have like a year to year and a half sales cycles? And at that point in time, they might not contractually be ready to switch out. So how do you look at a middle funnel conversion opportunity of signing up for a newsletter or download this white paper or something along those lines so that they can still stay in that ecosystem because they're not going to convert until they get closer down inside of the contract timeline or whatever that may be. So it's brilliant. Awesome. All right, great. We are talking to Alyssa next about brands. So anyone who's watching this, go to our next video. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.